Meeting to order. Oh, turn the mic on. Before we start, I'd like to announce that Gary Gilbury is, through modern technology, is able to join us today. So Gary, are you there? Can you hear me? Gary?
I can hear you just fine.
There you go. Okay. Nice to hear you, Gary. Everybody says hello.
Thank you, sir. Okay, same to them. I miss you all.
We miss you too. All right, well, let's call the meeting to order and maybe we have a roll call, please.
Okay, McGilvery is a non-voting member.
Here?
Vanderveen,
Here.
Bagley. Here. Long. Herzog. Here. LaFontaine. Here. Nash.
Here.
Quarles. Smith Charles.
Present.
Stokes.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, we barely have a quorum, so let's lock the doors and nobody can leave until we're finished. Keeping in mind, we have an agenda that would choke an elephant. So let's stand if we pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Stokes, supported by Yolanda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. We're on our way. Approval of minutes. Are there any additions, corrections to the minutes? If none,
I would move them as presented.
moved by Commissioner Nash, supported by Amanda. All those in favor, please by say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Aye. Motion carried. Anybody here that'd like to make a public comment? Now or forever hold your peace. There are none, so I guess we can get on with the recognitions. Donna, you first.
Good afternoon.
Good
I think
afternoon.
everybody knows Sandy Dory. And Sandy's a recipient of the Disability Network of Eastern Michigan's Community Spirit Award in 2023. The Disability Network recognized Sandy specifically for her role in developing and coordinating adaptive sports and programs. Sandy's been a recreational therapist for decades, bringing knowledge and expertise to the communities she serves and we serve. She's well-known and well-loved resource throughout the community. Her programs are successful because of the partnerships she has developed with the disabled community. She collaborates with agencies by sharing volunteer staff and equipment. Currently, Oakland County Parks is coordinating with the Disability Network of Eastern Michigan to provide adaptive kayaking, adaptive golf, diverse ability days, and disability dirt days. The Disability Network acknowledges Sandy not only for these amazing events, but for being a friend and an advocate in the disability community. Other types of programs Sandy leads include Dreams and Wings, field trips and socials. She's now working on developing an opportunity for adaptive water skiing and pickleball. Sandy moved over to the Planning and Resource Development Unit here at Oakland County Parks just a few months ago. We're so thrilled to have someone on our team who makes such a big difference in other people's lives. And here's the award. I'm going to hold that up, Sandy. Please join me in showing our appreciation and congratulating Sandy.
if I may, I'd like to say something else about Sandy. She played golf with us this morning, Jim Dunleavy and Jess. They were the ones that didn't complain. They were the troopers. We cried uncle.
Well, this ain't working, I guess.
Melissa,
Good to go? Okay.
good to go. Let's rock and roll.
All right, good afternoon. So we wanted to bring this item to the commission for information today and just update you on this project that we've been supporting over the past year with the communities along the 9 Mile Corridor. You'll remember, well, I guess the way this kind of came about was over the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, I guess, as we started meeting with the local communities about potential ARPA projects, potential partnerships. The 9 Mile Corridor kept coming up as an area of interest for all of those communities and how they could better connect and utilize that corridor. So we worked with them and we applied to SEMCOG's Planning Assistance Program, and they awarded us a grant for that project, which the commission graciously matched with about $60,000 of our funds for a $100,000 project to put this study together. So it is a very large, long study, so we didn't put it in your packets, but I'm gonna kind of run through what's in it really quick, and then if you'd like a copy, we can email it to you to look at. So just some acknowledgements. These are the communities along 9 Mile, and these are the folks that made up the task force. So as I mentioned, this is a very large report, and I'm going to go over it very quickly because we have a full agenda, but these are the major components within the report. The goals of this project really is about connecting the communities along the 9 Mile Corridor, but it's also about attracting development, unifying the corridor through placemaking initiatives, managing stormwater, supporting mobility, and identifying priorities and funding. It's a very ambitious vision. It's an 18-mile corridor through Oakland County, going through 6 very vibrant and very different community types. So we know it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all prescription for this pathway. But the goal is to connect institutions and recreational amenities along the corridor through a variety of different options, including shared use paths, bike lanes, sidewalks, and pedestrian-centered alleys, which is a very interesting concept I'll hit on a little bit. And we wanted to provide seamless access for folks that want to use the corridor. The discovery phase was a lot of data gathering. OHM did this report for us, I should say that. OHM was our consultant, and they work with some of the communities already, so they were a very good partner. But a lot of data gathering, a lot of looking at SEMCOG's data on equity focus areas, of which there are several along the corridor. You can see there's a lot of people that live within walking and biking distance of the corridor, and also opportunities for major regional connections. The I-275 pathway, obviously, on the west, which gets you to the West Bloomfield and the Clinton River Trail, and then the Joe Louis Greenway coming up from Detroit on the south. We did a good amount of community engagement. We took a tour of the entire corridor, a full-day tour with the task force. We did pop-up events in Ferndale and Farmington to ask people questions about the corridor and see how they like to use it. We did a community survey that got 720 responses, which is great, and had a couple of public open houses. So you can, that is hard to read, and I apologize for that, but essentially that question was, what would encourage you to walk or bike more along the 9 Mile Corridor? And the main things people said were more seating and shade, protected bike lanes, so safety is a big factor, landscaping and trees, more placemaking elements, wider sidewalks, and more parks and public spaces. If you haven't had a chance to see what Oak Park is doing along the corridor right now, it's very cool. It's a nice linear parkway along that corridor with different playscapes and seating areas, and the communities really like that idea. So as I mentioned, no one-size-fits-all approach, a variety of different ways will need to be used in order to connect the 9 Mile Corridor. So what the report does is divides the entire report divided by community and then divided into segments by community so that we could target individual stretches along the corridor and look at what would be the best potential treatment for that corridor. So this is an example from Farmington. You can see they're recommending a shared use path in this area because there's lots of space to do that. In downtown Ferndale, where there is no space to do that, where essentially the buildings come up to the sidewalk, which comes up to the road, more creative approach looking at the alleyway behind some of the buildings on 9 Mile, which would be much easier to retrofit to include a pathway. And then just one more example in Hazel Park, as we get to the I-75 corridor, looking at a dedicated on-street bike lane and then essentially nicer sidewalks for pedestrians. So the action plan, you know, the communities are very interested in figuring out how to move this forward, and we're going to work with them on how we can best support them in that effort. But these are all the different steps that kind of came out of the plan and the ways that they want to continue to move forward. So next steps for us, as I mentioned, we sort of served as the convener and the coordinator for this group, bringing the communities together and managing the contract. We are going to meet with the county executive staff and some of the economic development folks at the county and let them know kind of where we landed with this, where we're at, and see maybe how they want to participate going forward versus maybe how Parks wants to participate going forward. Short term, we're going to help them with a resolution they can all pass to adopt the plan in their own communities, and we'll continue to convene the group as needed. Longer term, first steps, they're looking at potentially some branding and identity development support so that they can start putting this out there as an actual thing that we're working toward. And then figuring out who among the communities or a consultant or a partner of some sort who can help sort of pull all the grant funding and the investment coordination together. Because as you can see, this is a rough estimate, which we think is very low, to be honest, but you know, we'll need a lot of grant funding to get a lot of these projects done. So overall, though, really great project. The communities are very excited about it. Wanted me to thank you on their behalf for supporting this project. It's been a really great way to bring everybody together and rally them around a common goal to connect the communities together. So I can email out a copy of the report if you want to look at it in more detail, and I've got some copies here if you want to see them.
Thank you, Melissa. Are there any questions or comments?
I would like to.
Good job.
No, real quick, when the stormwater, you know, using that as part of what you're doing, who are you working with on that? Is that?
Right now, we're not working with anyone. Right now, I mean, the individual communities, the goal will be right now for them to kind of adopt this plan, and if they have any current projects or upcoming projects on the corridor, which a lot of them do, they'll be thinking a little more strategically maybe about what that looks like in those projects in the corridor, but we haven't necessarily engaged with someone specifically for that.
You know, my office could help with that. My environmental group, we're doing a lot of things around stormwater in the GWK, which is 4 of those communities are
Right.
part of that.
Yeah.
So we'd be happy to help in any way we can, design it or even, you know, help fund it in some ways. So we can look at that.
That would be fantastic. And the next time they get together, we don't have a meeting scheduled right now, but maybe we could have you or someone from WRC come and talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely.
Great.
Anything else? Thank you, Melissa. Sarah Cook Malin's up.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. So in 2023, Oakland County Parks was the recipient of the Michigan Nursery and Landscape Association Community Landscapification Award. This was for our project at Waterford Oaks, converting the landscaping around our administrative building, the activity center, and our RPS building, and our facilities maintenance building to all native landscaping. As many of you remember from probably pre-2020, we had very traditional landscaping there. So we converted that middle island and then converted all the landscaping around the buildings. And so they recognized us for that effort and thought it was a beautiful project. So we had a ceremony just a couple weeks ago at Waterford Oaks. There were many staff involved, so this award is for us as an organization, but I would call out our natural resources staff for maintaining the maintenance, and also our Waterford Oaks staff for really contributing to the vision, and they've also done quite a bit of the maintenance. So it was a collaborative effort of many of our staff members, but those were 2 of the groups that really participated the most. So congratulations to everyone for the award and the beautiful landscaping at Waterford Oaks. Yeah. Environmental sustainability members, do you guys want to come up and take the photo with us for this award? Commissioners Herzog, Nash, Ms. Charles?
Don't look so excited about it.
If you're on the sustainability committee, come this way. No.
Set. Okay. Then we get to move to the regular agenda. Proposed budget, Mr. Ward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we have a lengthy agenda today, and this is a pretty major item that needs to be addressed. This is really the culmination of a long process that continues throughout the year. Starts with the work that we do, working directly with the budget managers, the park supervisors, all of our supervisors and staff to gather their input, feedback and ideas about what their budget priorities would be, and leads into a review by our management team. And then, of course, you all have provided a preliminary review of this budget, and then incorporated into the county executive's recommended budget. It goes before the finance committee, where we were just a few weeks ago, and I think received a pretty favorable review by the finance committee, and will be wrapped up in the final county budget adopted by the Board of Commissioners later this month. So this would be the final approval of our operating budget for fiscal year 24 with the triennial forecast for FY 25 and 26, along with our capital improvement plan, our capital equipment plan, and our maintenance management plan. I don't know if you want to take care of all that in one motion, or you want to take them in separate pieces.
Commissioners, have any thoughts on that? At your discretion.
Okay, all right. Well, I just want to say a few things about it, and then be happy to take any questions that you might have. This is largely, substantially, very much the same as what you reviewed at your last meeting 2 months ago, since we didn't have a meeting last month. With just a few changes. The most substantial changes are changes to the capital improvement plan. We have 2 projects that we would like to move forward to the next fiscal year to take advantage of the mobilization and the work that we're going to be doing implementing our ARPA plan at Red Oaks Park and at Catalpa Oaks Park. We had 2 parking lot improvement projects planned for both of those facilities. And while we have designers on board, while we have our engineering team and construction managers all working on this, it seems to make a lot of sense to take advantage of that opportunity to get all the work done and then provide the public with a refreshed park all the way around. So we are recommending those changes, adding those projects, which you'll see if you want to see in detail. It's on this page in your packet. That is largely the most substantial changes that you'll see in the budget from what we reviewed a few months ago. It's a fiscally responsible budget in our long tradition as Oakland County Parks. About $2.1 million is planned as a net position increase, a budget surplus. Further, $2.8 million is budgeted for depreciation, which is a non-cash expense, and so almost $5 million is planned, even before there's any budget favorability, to go back into our net position so that we can reinvest it back into our capital equipment and facilities. We have reoriented this budget around the core values that you all approved in the new strategic master plan: diversity, equity, and inclusion, environmental sustainability, fiscal responsibility, health and wellness. Forgetting one? I think that's all, right? I'm looking to my planning folks for help. It really does reflect the importance of investing in our workforce. Over the last several years, we really have put quite a bit more, especially some of the additional funding that we've received from the millage, into rebuilding our workforce, which has been chronically understaffed, especially our frontline positions. And those folks really carried us through the pandemic, but have been overtaxed and overstressed and needed more hands on deck. So we have added more positions in our park operations, pretty much all of our frontline operations. And we've also built a talent amongst our staff that I think you'll see here today that's allowing us to do so much more than we used to do in many of the new aspects of roles and responsibilities that we've taken on with the adoption of the millage. And then I think the other, really the major thing you'll see here is a huge increase in the amount of funding that we're putting into capital, into our facilities, into the expansions that are incorporated in our rescue plan, healthy communities projects. I think pre-millage increase altogether was about $3 million for both capital equipment and capital improvements. This budget is $11 million between the two of them. It incorporates the majority of the implementation of the ARPA projects in the match commitment that we made with the approval of that, and we'll begin to see a lot of progress in the next fiscal year in implementing all of those projects. And we are also reaching kind of a halfway point. You'll recall when the millage case was being made, we made a strong case, Oakland County Parks made a strong case that we had a large backlog of deferred maintenance investments that really needed to be done. So with the adoption of this plan, we'll be at a 50% mark of achieving, that commitment that was made. So with that, I think I've probably spoken enough. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. All on the staff to help me if I don't know the answers.
Anybody have any questions? I have one. Did I hear you correctly, Chris, that the deferred maintenance, we're going to have 50% of that in this budget?
With the CIP plan here, we'll have either achieved or have scheduled to get to the 50% mark.
That's remarkable. That's very commendable.
Some of the future years.
Yeah.
But yes. Yeah, we've made a ton
That's
of
great,
progress.
great work forward.
Yeah, it's a testament to both the planning staff, Zach, and engineering. We really put quite a lot of pressure on them to move things along at greater volume and speed. They've proven they can do it, so I'll just keep adding more things on their agenda.
They'll come up.
Yeah. Any other
No,
questions?
no other comments or questions? There's a bunch of happy campers over here.
If you'd like to just wrap it all into one motion then, Mr. Chair, the resolution,
That's fine.
the plan, the equipment plan, and the management plan. We can reflect that in minutes.
Do we
I would
have a
move
motion?
I would move that.
Moved by Commissioner Nash, supported by Ebony. Should have a roll call in this, please.
I was just gonna check with you, Mr. Ward. Capital improvement, capital equipment, are there any, when we think about SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, are there any opportunities, any threats, weaknesses, strengths that you might want to point out?
Well, one thing I do want to point, especially with the capital equipment, we process where you're going to be provided green alternatives, cost them out, and allow the commission to really make those determinations. And sometimes those things cost a little bit more money and may, decisions to go forward with those, and we'll have to decide some other piece of equipment to defer or take off the list if we have to stay within our budget restrictions. Other than that, nothing comes to mind. There's always much more that we would love to do in terms of investing in our facilities. Our water parks is another issue that maybe we could touch on when we get to the consulting item a little later on the agenda. We have deferred those investments at our water parks to a point now where we're beginning to incur major ongoing costs just to keep ourselves afloat. So that decision point is coming quickly, where we're going to have to decide where we're going to go in the future. Reinvest and really commit to operating water parks or go in a different direction.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, just to follow up real quick, was, we were able to use the course today to just get a feel for the facilities. And one of the things that was mentioned was that in one iteration, I thought of you, Lance, in what an iteration of club cars, apparently is it called Club Car? And then there's Club Cadet. Well, one of them is really good at brakes, but not good at maintenance and upkeep. So I'm just curious, do we have a plan in terms of this capital equipment plan to just make sure that we're getting, sometimes the price isn't really the real deal. The real deal is how much maintenance and if it's maintainable over time. Do you have a plan to where you're getting equipment that the staff likes?
I'm going to phone a friend of Tom Hughes because he's our golf expert. I'll say, on the next few items that are really generated out of advice we've received from our Plant Moran, Counties of Concord. That's one of the recommendations, is that we incorporate a more thorough process of understanding the total cost of decisions we make. So
Yeah.
we're going to be working with them to build that. Tom, do you want to respond to the golf carts? You want to do this still Donahue style?
For golf carts, in 2017, we did a purchase of them. We got the low bid, which turned out to be a disaster for us. It cost us a lot of money to maintain the golf carts, as you said, with the brakes, parts, batteries, so it become a high maintenance item. This last round, we did our due diligence and get the club cars back, because club cars are the highest quality golf carts out there. There's still limitations with brakes. That's the one downfall of club cars. So going forward, next time, we'll be evaluating golf carts, what's the best available. That's not a capital equipment yet because of the cost of them. Each one's under $5,000. By the time it gets to the purchase of those in 2024, 25, it might be a capital item, so we'll forecast for then. But for golf carts, we're just always evaluating what the best option is and trying to get those best quality golf carts and not go down the road of just the least expensive.
Anything else I could respond to? Let me just, say one other thing to Commissioner Charles' question. I think in many ways we're catching up to where we need to be, and we're getting in progress there, but that's not getting us too far forward, not looking too far into the future. So there is certainly a need and a case to be made for a greater investment in our parks and facilities, trails, etc. And that may be something we're exploring. I brought that up during your last meeting. That it may be time to start thinking about the future in terms of whether we need to ask the voters for even more support. There seems to be strong support out in the communities behind recreation. It may be the right time to do it if we're ever going to do it.
Okay. Any other comments or discussions? If not, I'll ask for the roll.
Bagley? Herzog?
Yes.
LaFontaine,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Quarles,
Pass.
pardon,
Pass.
Smith Charles,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Vanderveen.
Yes,
Motion carries.
that was the budget. This is the budget. All right, item 2 in the regular agenda is the net position reserves policy.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Congratulations, folks, on the budget, by the way.
Yes.
Nicely done.
Thank you for your support of our budget. Nice to be able to pay the bills. These next several items all relate to discussions we had during the development of last year's budget, talking about fiscal policies in general, with the increase in the millage and our new positioning in the areas that we're spending more money in. There's a need to update our fiscal policies in general. The county's made some changes along these lines, and then there's also some areas where we just don't have well codified, written, defined rules that would be helpful to us as staff to know exactly what the procedures are and what the commission's desire is in terms of their level of involvement in the decision-making process and where they're comfortable with delegating some authority to us as staff to move forward. The first item here is our net position and reserves policy. We worked with Plant Moran on this issue. Our current policy is to maintain 50% of our operating budget, 6 months of our operating budget, as financial reserves to support our operations, which is quite a bit larger than the county's policy, which is 25% to maintain an operating reserve. It is much larger than the standard best practice that GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, or even Plant Moran says it's quite a bit higher than the standard practice. And I understand. I think the history there was to certainly take a fiscally conservative approach and prepare for worst-case scenarios, which could include the potential that the voters may not approve a millage renewal. We might need to sustain operations for a period of time until a millage could be question could be put back on the ballot. However, I think we now have been through 6 or 7 millage renewal campaigns, and it's, to my knowledge, never been below 70% of the vote. It would be an effective strategy to go 2 years early, and the presidential election of 2028 for that renewal. We've seen some evidence that the larger turnout general elections even are more favorable to the environment to us. So that may alleviate some of those concerns. By moving to a 25% rainy day fund, to sustain our operations in some sort of emergency or economic downturn, that would be consistent with the county's policy. It would be consistent with the advice we've heard that we really should be utilizing our net position to do a better long-term capital financing plan so that we can reserve funds looking forward to the end life of our millage, looking forward, and plan ahead to replace and reinvest in our facilities in a longer-term basis. Really, overall, the objective of these policies is to make sure that we do sustain sufficient balance in those emergency situations, to avoid the use of our net position, our savings account, to fund our checking account, essentially, to not operate our ongoing expenses out of our savings, and to reserve those funds for those major investments. And along with the capital asset planning, we also have entered into a new area with the millage where we're dispersing grants through a reimbursement program, which gives the community a 3-year window to finalize their project and turn in for reimbursement. Makes it much harder for us to manage that program in our operating budget since it goes over multiple years. So it's also a better tool for us to manage that type of program. So Plant has reviewed this recommended policy. It would replace our former policy. It is our recommendation as your management team and staff that we adopt this policy. I will say, especially in light of the new projects we're taking on with expanded capital investments, the large influx of federal grant opportunities. That's growing our budget and making that 50% number so much harder to reach each time we invest more money, which is a little bit counterintuitive in terms of, incentives. We really want to maintain our facilities and reinvest before, we let them deteriorate to a point that the cost goes so much higher up. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Are there any comments, questions, discussion on this item? I have one, Chris. How would you plan, if approved, how would you implement this? Would it be over time or right away, or?
It would be a
It gives you, obviously gives you more dollars to spend now if you choose to do that.
Well, actually, the way this process works, it will align with how the county manages the county's fund balance with their equivalent. So what happens is when the counting business is all done and wrapped up all of the books, they give you an accurate picture of how much money is actually in your savings. And then there's a process that we would go through with the commission to get that, that complete picture of how much money we have. And then we would assign it and reserve it for various purposes. So
Okay.
it would be sort of a second step to this process that you'll see in December. And it will also help us make decisions with our grant program, decide how much money we're going to make available to local communities each year as well. And have a snapshot.
This is a big step. Anybody? Anything else? Anybody happy? Yolanda?
I wanted to make sure I didn't miss it, Chris. Did you say there was a percentage you referred to that is greater than GFOA that we adhere to?
Our current policy, which is 50% or 6 months of our operating budget. So, you just adopted a $38 million operating budget, roughly. So, you basically, by maintaining that policy, keep $19 million off the table. It couldn't be more. This recommendation is to go to 25% for operations and then assign year by year how much money we can put into our capital investments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Need a motion to move by. Excuse me. Motion, support.
I'm sorry, who moved it?
Andrea. Couldn't,
And then supported by Smith Charles.
yes. Fighting something here, fighting that rain we had this morning.
Are we ready for?
All right, I think a roll call's in order if there's no further discussion. Let's have the roll, please.
Herzog?
Yes.
LaFontaine? Yes. Nash?
Yes.
Quarles? Smith Charles?
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
Vanderveen?
Yes.
Bagley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item 3, expenditure and contract approval policy.
Thanks again. So this item is another issue that arose in our discussions with Plant Moran. We have, over the years, accumulated a number of precedential decisions that have kind of guided staff in what to bring to the commission and when. When I first came aboard here, there were certain items that were coming back to you multiple times. And it was hard to understand why that was, but often it went back to something that went sideways in the past. And so we have addressed this in a couple of these areas over the last year and a half. When it comes to contracts, you had adopted a motion to bring us in line with the county's contract approval process. What you have there with contracts is consistent with the county's process. And with capital equipment, we had that discussion as well. And this builds in the understanding that we have that you'll be provided the green alternative options before we implement and move forward with purchases for our capital equipment. Where there really was some need to add some clarity was with our capital improvement projects, which those really were the ones that you were often seeing multiple times in the process before you were pulling the trigger on whether to decide to move forward with the project or not. And this really clarifies, once you've approved the CIP plan like you have now, that our staff will go out to RFP, get you an actual cost, an actual scope for the project, bring that to you along with the results of the RFP so you know what the final costs and budget would be for the project. And that would be really the approval for the project. With some flexibility below the amount of $30,000 to do, to proceed with projects, which is consistent with your current policy and for emergency situations, which occasionally does pop up. So, you know, we have just tried to codify and put that all together and then come up with a logical process for capital improvements. Of course, if the commission would like to see these things multiple times, or if you'd like to be more involved in the process, this all can be adjusted. It would be very helpful to us to have it all codified into the policy, so we know what our expectations are. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Squirrels?
Yeah, thank you. And maybe it's where I'm sitting. I'm not clear. Now, is this policy that you're trying to codify just for determining the minimum for capital budget, or is it?
It captures a bunch of things that we've already addressed, but puts it in a policy rather than a motion of the commission. But on the CIP, yes, because it sets, you know, any project over $30,000 needs to come to you. You need to have the results of the RFP of the project scope, unless there's an emergency situation, in which case we address it at the following. Like we've had during the last year with some of our equipment that broke down.
So $30,000 is the minimum?
That's, anything below $30,000, we'd have administrative authority. But above that, everything comes to you after the final RFP or a recommended budget.
Does that coincide with what you're doing today?
I'm sorry?
Does that coincide with what you're doing today?
Right now, it's pretty unclear, and that's what we're hoping to get clarified. This is consistent with the county government side's policy with capital projects. They have that $30,000 level, and that's fairly consistent with the process.
Okay, thank you.
Not, you know, seeking to have the authority to undo. If there's anything commissioners are comfortable with, but we would just like some clarity.
Any other comments? Questions? Not, we have a roll call? Oh, we need a motion for, I'm sorry. I'll entertain a motion. Moved by Ebony, supported by
Support.
Yolanda. Now let's have a roll call.
LaFontaine,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Quarles, Smith Charles,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Vanderveen,
Yes.
Bagley,
Yes.
Herzog.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Item 4, request for redesignation as a special revenue fund.
This item might seem a little dry on the surface, but it actually has a significant impact on our operating budget. Years back, the county redesignated us, and this is all accounting terminology, but we were what was called a special revenue fund, and became, as a result of that change, called an enterprise fund. And working with Plant Moran to deal with this issue of depreciation, which has long been a subject of conversation amongst commission and the staff, in some confusion. The way our budget is organized right now as an enterprise fund, we must account for the depreciation of our assets as an expense in our budget. However, that's actually not a cash expense, so what happens is it inflates the budget when you adopt it, but it's money that isn't spent, so it's taken out at the end. So, in essence, what that does is it takes money off the table that you can't spend during the budget year. You know, theoretically, when it comes to an enterprise fund, Commissioner Nash knows them very well, and the the idea there is for something like maybe a sewer and water fund, that you're bringing in enough revenue from the fees to put it back into the system because it has to be fully self-supporting. Our budget is roughly 67% property tax usage. And so really, in talking through this with Plan Moran, we really are much more oriented to what a special revenue fund is, which is a way of segmenting funds separately for a different purpose within the county's budget. The motion that's written up for you here in the packet is not binding. It's really expressing a request on the part of the commission that the Board of Commissioners and the Department of Management and Budget Administration look at this issue. We have talked to them about it. They are open-minded about it. I just simply want to keep this issue in the forefront. As we're receiving these large federal grants, it really does sort of artificially inflate our budget by accounting for all that depreciation. The agreements that we've entered into with the local governments, we have the potential of taking on all of the depreciation that's accumulated for those parks, but not necessarily something that might be our expense at the end because there's a 20-year operating agreement. So, I guess to very much summarize it, it just makes this much harder for you to pass along in a really unnecessary way because the expenses don't actually hit our budget. It's just accounting. Happy to answer any questions. I know this is near and dear to Commissioner Van der Veen's heart.
If I could make a motion today, I would, but I can't.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to make sure I was clear, Director Ward. Years ago, it was changed from special revenue to enterprise. Do you anticipate any pushback from the executive side of the field? And then I imagine you're going to come and talk about this with perhaps the caucuses sometime in the next couple weeks?
We did broach it with Kyle Jen, Department of Management and Budget. The timing wasn't great because they were really getting into the thick of budget preparation. They certainly were open-minded to it. I had not received anything in the way of pushback. I just want to keep this on the agenda because as we're moving forward with these ARPA projects and going from $3 million to $11 million in capital spending, that's going to really inflate our depreciation and make our capital unnecessary.
Yes, if I may, Mr. Chair, just thinking about conversations they've had about transportation, the idea was that, not transportation, the road commission, was that it was in large part very similar to how they were envisioning parks. So I was just curious if this is kind of like the harbinger of how they'll interact with these, I call them departments because I'm not really as familiar with the terms, but it does sound like you're in favor of it. I'm happy to go to bat, again, because it sounds like this is something that would be helpful to parks in general.
Is that a motion?
I think the reasoning behind the changeover was to make it very clear that we need to be fully self-supporting. We understand. I don't think that situation will change regardless of funding.
Yeah, and I'm happy to make the motion when the time's right, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion. Do we have a support? Supported? Herzog? All those, roll call, please.
Nash.
Yes.
Quarles. Smith Charles.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Vanderveen.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Herzog.
Yes.
LaFontaine.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I didn't mention it during the presentation, but the airport has many times more problems with this than Parks does. This is a good step forward. Item 5, major program facility strategic consulting.
Okay, you're almost done with me. This item relates back to an item you addressed at your last commission meeting. We brought forward a proposal to seek proposals from an expert external consultant using the model that the commission followed with the golf expert that was brought in a couple of years ago. We've really seen that investment pay big dividends in terms of the revenues that we're experiencing and more efficient operations that we're able to provide at our golf facilities. And probably for the first time in many years, if not in our history, we're operating, our golf facilities pretty much fully financially self-sufficient, which is a huge step forward. You adopted a motion at the last meeting to authorize us to move forward with seeking proposals for a consultant with some expertise in the area of campground management. We did put out an RFP. Part of your motion was to limit that expense to $30,000. We only got one bid in, and it came in at $29,600 plus travel expense. So, the request, part of this motion is to just give us a little bit more flexibility to, incur those travel expenses. Take that $30,000 to $32,000. But then we've also, as a management team, we've talked through the other major focus areas where this type of work could be very beneficial. First and foremost, are water parks. Water parks really are at that critical point where we need to, as Oakland County Parks, make a decision whether we want to commit further into the business, transform, or find an exit strategy. The capital decisions are going to make that for us if we don't make decisions ourselves. And we're in a changing environment, both in terms of the labor situation and the way that extreme weather is impacting our business as well. So bringing in an outside expert that does know quite a bit about how water parks are functioning and financially surviving, where the industry is going, what the need is from the public, I think would be very beneficial. Nature education is another area. We have 2 nature education centers. There's been quite a lot of investment on the part of the state, federal government, and some beautiful, wonderful nature education, wilderness centers in the southeast Michigan area. Just understanding where our niche is and where there's opportunity and desire from the public for us to do more. And then finally, an issue that has long been a subject of concern at Oakland County Parks is our event rental, our venue management. We've come through the process of changing over the liquor license, which is allowing us to now really actively pursue rentals here at Lion Oaks and White Lake Oaks. Tom's going to address the fees for Lion Oaks because we are seeing some positive results from that, but we also need to plan ahead. At Glen Oaks and Beulah Estate, our other 2 major facilities are vendor oak management, could very likely be looking to exit from the business, and so we need to have an idea of where we're going to go from here. And so that may look at many different options of how these facilities could be repurposed. Maybe there's a better model that we haven't explored yet to get them rented out and to achieve the greatest amount of revenue possible. And so we'd like to pursue that one as well. Altogether, at $32,000 a piece, that would be $120,000. Seeking your approval to go out to RFP and engage consultants if we find that the results from the RFPs are valuable. The other piece with this as well, we'd like to, I think a real part of the success of the golf study, if I understand it, is the commission's involvement in the process, which then led to some tough decisions that weren't always popular, and that may be the case for each of these as well. And so, to the extent that you're interested and willing, we'd love to have participation from the commission in each one of these. If like to volunteer or participate in the work groups that come along.
That's it? Okay.
Yep.
Said a mouthful, there's quite a bit.
You get paid by the word.
Any comments, questions, concerns? Chris, are we talking about 5 contracts or 8, or 1?
Campgrounds,
Okay.
parks, nature education,
Water,
venue.
I've got campgrounds, water parks, nature centers, and conference centers. Okay, 4. They're 4 separate contracts. Got it, okay.
And I
To
think
go
we'll
to-
proceed if we find that we get something back that's really valuable, that's comparable to what you received from the golf consultant.
So
If
you'd
it
like,
doesn't match our need, then we wouldn't proceed.
so was it 128,000?
128 plus the increase for the campground.
Okay. With that understanding, is there, Yolanda?
Hello, Director again. I wanted to make sure I read this correctly. So in 2022, and it looks like other years as well, our expenses were more than our revenue. And that's,
In which area?
I'm looking at Waterford Oaks
Yes, is it the water park?
and,
That's been pretty consistent.
and one other, oh, Red Oaks. So, even thinking back to the last measure we just voted on, the special revenue versus the E word that I can't think, enterprise. Does this put us in a good position because our expenses, we won't be held accountable if, our expenses are more than our revenue if you go to the special?
No, it doesn't relate to that. What it does relate to is with our strategic master plan you all adopted earlier this year, we set cost recovery objectives for various aspects of our operations. And there are water parks, we have, an expectation level that is difficult to reach. And certainly our event centers have fallen short of that. The expectation is to fully pay for themselves by funding to maintain capital needs there. With nature education, it's not so much an issue of cost recovery as adaptation to the changing market conditions, I guess.
The Southfield Oaks and the Oak Park Oaks, or whatever those names are going to be, how do they factor into these strategic facility consulting, if at all?
Not at all. For all of the new ARPA projects that the parks are bringing on board, they're mostly passive focused parks without staff facilities like this.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, I think motions are in order. Amanda moves, supported by Yolanda. A motion and a support. Roll call, please.
Quarles? Smith Charles?
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
Vanderveen?
Yes.
Bagley?
Yes.
Herzog?
Yes.
LaFontaine?
Yes.
And Knapp?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Ready for me?
Mr. Dunleavy still in his golf clothes.
Yeah, still on my golf clothes. What a great day. I'm actually a little chilly in here because I'm still a little bit damp. So every year we review all the annual park fees. And at this time of the year, we need to move forward with the permits for the parks. So we'd like to, actually, we're looking at maintaining that same fee as we did the last couple of years. So that's what we're here today to go through that. So the permit fees are reviewed annually. Recommendations are made to the Parks Commission based on assessment of current vendors' fees and the cost of services. In 2022, we generated over $700,000 in revenue, and as of August 31st, we're at $620,000. Something that we did as part of the millage is we've given free passes to the seniors, also active military and veterans, and individuals with permanent disabilities. And we gave away over 15,000 passes, which is amazing. So that's a really great part of this annual Park Pass program. We're going to continue that. And also, we'd like to continue our Military Appreciation Month in May and offer the promotional voucher for one night. It could either be one night of camping, one day at the water park, one day at the ORV park. Golf is already included in the veterans. That's something we'd like to move forward. We'd also, the Metro Parks have agreed to maintain our relationship with them. We'd like to move forward with that also. Staff recommends that we move forward with that.
You want everything as is.
Yep.
At some point, we're gonna have to start thinking about inflation. Are there any, excuse me, I jumped forward there. Is there anybody, comments, concerns, questions?
Can you tell me, maybe I missed it, the Metro Parks connection? Is there a reciprocity agreement or something using their parks?
We have an agreement with them that we have like a dual pass. So you can actually go to both parks. $64, kind of combine the fees together. That's actually a great value for a lot of people to be able to do that, especially if you live near both parks. You see a lot of those.
And then, as far as the veterans were concerned, did you say May? May?
Well, we just celebrate May as part of the appreciation. That's kind of when we kicked it off last year. But we'll still do that. We'll do some activities in May along with that.
And our golf course is closing in November. Is that why we're not doing like isn't it Veterans Day on the 11th of November? I was just curious.
Well, we'll have free entry to the parks.
Free entry to the
Golf
parks.
courses, yeah, usually, it all depends on the weather. I mean,
Yeah.
no, Tom, if we got really, really good weather, we'll probably push, into November too.
Okay. I'd love to share that with the seniors in my life. So, thank you. I mean, the veterans, excuse me.
If I can, this is a pilot we just have started this last year to see, how impactful it is, how popular it is. We've made some adjustments to our campground fees that it upset some of we're really just one veteran, but it, brought it to our attention. And, we certainly want to do everything we can to honor the folks that have served our country. It really has had fairly minimal financial impact. So we wanted to see, one more year and then come back to commission and then we can assess it.
Okay, any other comments, contributions? Not, I think a motion's in order.
Do we sell them to employees? So all parks employees actually get a park pass now. This is something that you guys approve, so all full-time and part-time get an annual park pass. It's incredible. We're very appreciative of that. Everybody feels more welcome to our park system by doing that. It also helps with retention of our employees. In the past, if an employee was working independence and wanted to come into the park, even to go to work sometimes, we'd have to give them a special permit. And now by doing this, they can bring their families out and their friends. It's a great thing. And thanks to, Chris's leadership on that, all of our staff love it. And you guys too.
Is that also a motion? Oh. We still need a motion. Andrea moved and Jim supported. Roll call, please.
Smith Charles,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Vanderveen,
Yes.
Bagley,
Yes.
Herzog,
Yes.
LaFontaine,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Quarles. Motion carries.
Okay, moving right along. Oakland County Parks and Recreation Commission logo and park signage update. Melissa?
Okay, so what we wanted to talk to the commission about today is a proposed logo refresh. I know some of our commissioners have talked about the logo quite a lot over the last several years. So I wanted to just show this graphic that I think you've seen that Desiree's team has put together, kind of where we've been and where we are now. You can see we started back with the swimmers, or we sometimes call them the drowners back in the 70s, depending on how you look at that picture. But after that one, you start to see a little bit of consistency. Right? You see the O, you see the bird and the water. And over the years, we have had some attempts to potentially do a major change to the logo and really rebrand the organization, but we always come back to the blue and the green and the O. We like those things. We feel like they represent us well. So what I want to talk to you about today is not a brand new logo. It's sort of a refresh of our current logo. So Chris mentioned earlier, especially with the ARPA parks, you know, we're looking at kind of putting a fresh face on the parks. So we thought this was a perfect time to talk about putting a fresh face on the logo as well. Things that we have been talking about as a staff, again, keeping the O. We know people like the O, and it, you know, it's a recognizable shape and part of our logo. But we did want to maybe modernize the shape a little bit, create a little bit of movement. We've used, sorry, it's covered by the camera there. Oh, thanks. We've used this Burger King one as an example before to show how you can kind of refresh a logo without totally changing what that logo looks like and just make it pop a little bit and be a little bit more modern. We talked about updating from kind of that flat seagull shape on the O to maybe a more natural native bird silhouette. Remove the tagline. It's a little wordy. We don't always use it consistently. And potentially refresh the colors, but staying in the same family. But we actually, I think, are proposing to stay with the same colors. So essentially where that has landed us right now is this proposed design that Garrett, who is behind the camera today, has been working with staff back and forth on for several months. So again, you can see it just has a little bit more movement. The bird looks a little more natural. We looked at two different ways to do it, you know, one a stacked logo and then more of a linear logo for letterhead and things like that where you wouldn't necessarily, where you'd need something a little bit different. So I'm looking to see if there's any initial thoughts or reactions or facial expressions. But we did, Garrett went ahead and put it just on a few things so you could see kind of what it would look like. The one thing, again, one thing I'll mention too that we liked about this is that in our past logos, the Oakland has been the major word. It's been the largest word. It's been what you see first. And with this logo, it's parks. So it's a little more, you know, representative maybe of what we do in the public. There it is again. But the next thing I want to talk about is signage, but I would like to see if there's any feedback, any discussion. We're not necessarily married to this, but we have had a lot of discussion about it and a lot of back and forth. We've added colors, we've added leaves, we've added sunsets, and we always kind of come back to this shape and this kind of general design.
Lance?
Well, this is we're proposing as a potential new logo. I don't know what bird it is, to be honest.
Seagull.
That is, I think we all agree that that is a seagull. That's kind of the traditional kind of seagull design shape, yeah. Warbler? Warbler. A warbler? We are.
Pea soup, how's that, Lance? Pea soup.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we can definitely play around with the colors. These are the colors that we've been using, but I know there are other blues and greens in the county palette, I think, that we might be able to play around with a little bit.
I was wondering if it's just because of how it's blown up right
That
now.
might be part of it, but I see what you're saying. It's a good point.
If we get like a, you know, natural, but definitely I would love a more vibrant look.
Yeah, because actually even looking at it now, my printed version is much darker than what you see on the screen. So
right.
Maybe send out a version or somehow get you a version that's you're not seeing the sort of how the screen is interpreting it.
Like the brightener.
And if you could find out, I'm curious. Is it, as you know, it's supposed, Michigan's known for the great brown-tailed hawk, I think.
Yeah, I think he was basing it off of a warbler, which
Yeah.
is a native Michigan bird.
I have one last question. If that becomes the new logo, can I get a new hat?
100%, yes.
So, Nancy?
It's the wording. Have you decided if you're using the two lines or the one line? Or is that still up for
So we would
discussion?
probably use both. Like you'll notice now, even we have a couple different versions of the logo that we use depending on where it needs to go, if it's on apparel or if it's on the top of a piece of letterhead. So it helps us to have two official versions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I was feeling like this circle is more of a 0 as opposed to an O. So I was just wondering if, this gives me 0 vibes and not an O.
We don't
But-
want that. We definitely don't want that.
And then I was going to say the lectern that you're standing at, I think those are the actual colors for folks if they want to.
A little, I think, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
More of a forest green, or Kelly green.
Yeah. But other than that, I like the vision.
I mean, if the commission wants to discuss it more, we could bring back a couple of different versions for you to look at, or if you want to give us direction today, it's up to you.
Andrea, you,
I don't want to go like too far into the weeds. I like it. I don't love it. It gives me retro vibes versus modern vibes.
Okay.
The font, not overly enamored with, and I think the bird is really big. And I also like Commissioner Charles. I think it looks like a 0 instead of an O. And if we do change to the green, I know I'm giving you full-blown opinion here. If not DNR green,
Agreed. Yeah.
that'd be great.
No, this is great feedback. We want your opinion on this, 100%, so this is great.
Ebony, did you?
Mr. Chairman?
Since we're doing considerations, has there been any consideration to maybe with that big O, like an O and a C kind of, like Oakland County, like if we want to I don't know.
We have not mocked up
Okay.
anything like that. We could
I'm
definitely
thinking
play
of
with
some
it.
of the other park systems around here, that's kind of a trend. So maybe some kind of O.
You wanna see in it?
Parks, OC, yeah,
Yeah.
with that one, we can play around with that.
Yeah.
The green.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Is that you, Gary?
Yes, it is. Do I have the floor?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm sorry, I wasn't sure. One thought I had was, in each of the parks around the county, is there any way possible that we can list the amenities that are in the parks, whether it be disc golf or a playground or tennis courts, or just so that people can drive by and know what's in the park?
Yeah, I think that's something we can take a look at. Actually, my next couple slides here talk about the park entry signs, the monument signs, so I can show those, and then, yeah, we can definitely consider that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Yolanda?
Yeah, something Gary said that triggered my thinking, because like a lot of times you'll have shields and like country clubs around here. If you look at any of their logos, it'll have like 4 squares of the different attractions. Maybe it's tennis, maybe it's this, that, and the other. Because looking at this, I would think that Oakland County Parks is really big on water. And we've got a lot that we offer, from the ORV to just nature trails and stuff like that. So I like it, but I feel like there's opportunity there to possibly have like a crest and just, throw caution to the wind and just be bold. But I'll leave it at that.
We can show you some other logos that we looked at. Garrett did a lot of research in pulling logos for us to look at and looking at ones that we thought worked really well and ones that we thought didn't work very well. It gets a little tricky when you get into a lot of detail. It might look good on a monument sign, but maybe not great printed or on a shirt. So that was why we were kind of trying to keep it a little simple. I agree with the water. We did try to incorporate, you know, leaves and birds and other things, but it started to get a little bit too busy, so we landed back here again. We are not doing that. Nope. Okay, good.
Keep it simple.
Okay. All right. So this is really good feedback. We appreciate it. We want this to be a logo that everybody feels comfortable with and feels like represents our organization. So let us play around with it a little bit, and we can come back in October and talk about it a little more. But I did want to show you just really quick kind of what we're thinking about in terms of new entrance signs for the park system. So we have a lot of signs across the park system. The next slide gives a good example of it. They're all kind of either a combination of the updated overlay signs that we did in 2014, we think, with the yellow, which were actually meant to be temporary. They're just covering up what was there before, but we've left them in place. Or the older kind of like grayish colored signs with the blue and green logo on it. We have a lot of different styles throughout the park system, different types of materials, different landscaping. So we'd like to really kind of bring that all together over the next couple of years. Can you advance it, Shannon? It's not. Thanks. So here's, again, are just some examples of what's around the park system. Some are a little bit more dated, some have that newer 2014 cover over the top. So again, we were kind of thinking this would be a nice time to kind of put a new front door on the park system, a new welcome into our parks, something that's a little more fresh and contemporary, but still parky, not too, you know, flashy or commercial. We like the style, staff does, of kind of that national park theme, but maybe not quite as rustic as they go, but you know, those sorts of wood tones and that style. And really, we want to demonstrate that we take pride in our parks and that we're doing things within the parks. We are making improvements, and you know, we care about the face that we put out to the public. So this is going to show you some example signs. Maybe. So again, this has the O on it that may or may not change. So don't worry too much about that. But this kind of mimics the look of some of the national park signs with kind of the black bar at the top that would have our name in it, and then a solid color sign. We're leaning toward kind of the brown, but maybe a lighter brown or even wood-toned or wood panel on it. We want it to be a little bit more dynamic than just a flat panel. So maybe the O portion of the logo is raised out or raised up or is a different material, just so it's a little more visually interesting, a little more exciting when you drive by. And again, just looking at natural materials, earthy wood tones, and doing native landscaping around all the signs. For the most part, we would make exceptions for places like golf courses and things where that more formal landscaping is more appropriate. But this is kind of the direction that we are leaning. We'll obviously bring the logo back for you to take a closer look at. But any thoughts on this general kind of style for the entrance signs? I know they look a little flat, but it would be wood and more texture. This is just kind of a mock-up.
Comments? Lance?
All of our different parks. Are you suggesting going to a uniform? The only thing that troubles me about, that's what I thought you were suggesting, that's why I wanted to comment. The only thing that troubles me about that is if you go back to your previous with all those different signs for all of the different parks, right there. That looks to me like diversity. And isn't that something that we strive for? I'm not saying keep all those signs exactly the way they are, but just by having different ones, sends the message of diversity, which appears to be a big message that, we try to promote.
True, they are definitely diverse signs. I think when we look at that as staff, we see some that look a little old and outdated and some that look newer and fresher, so we want to make them all look newer and fresher. That's not to say we couldn't have some diversity. Maybe the water parks have a blue background versus the more natural parks have a brown. We can play around with that, but we definitely do want more consistency between the parks.
Yeah, if I can, you know, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, but the signs that are the multicolor signs there were meant to be a temporary solution.
Yep.
That have just lasted for 15+ years. And I think the idea is also to really get our brand identity kind of nailed down. Yeah, I mean, I think we have a standard we try to keep and something we try to convey to the public. With the master plan update, much of our conversation was how do we really convey the nature-centered aspect of Oakland County parks that we're really trying to, you know, get across to the public. So that was what motivated this. Yeah, but we do have such a wide variety of signs throughout the system there, and if nothing else, we need to make some decisions about the new signs that we're going to put up with our new ARPA projects that are going to be coming online soon.
Yeah, those would probably be the first ones that would get this new treatment. It is expensive to redo all of the main entrance signs, so it's probably something we would phase in over time. But as with those ARPA projects get rolling next year and we're doing the design for the park and we're working on park signage, you know, we can bring this back as part of those projects.
Andrea?
I do really appreciate the brand consistency. I think that's helpful, especially considering we're dependent on millage renewals, right? And seeing that brand out there and associating with the park experience makes sense. Looking at those signs, I do favor the brown ones just because of the ones that are used on roadways to indicate parks and natural areas. I think from user experience, that also makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll come back we should be able to come back in October, I think.
Appreciate the opportunity for input. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, item 9, Wildlife Management Pilot Program. Sarah?
We skipped
Oops,
number
I
8.
skip one. Oh, I'm sorry, Southfield.
Skip, community
Community
grant.
grant is award. Amendment.
Thank you. So this is correcting a bit of a miscommunication that we had around the Southfield application for the community grants program. They had initially submitted an application with the wrong, they had calculated their match incorrectly, and we asked them to fix that and to resubmit. They had originally asked for $100,000. When they resubmitted, they asked for 50 with a match of 50, but we had wanted them to ask for 100 with a match of 100, but they were a little confused on how they were supposed to do that math, and we didn't catch it when they resubmitted. So we put it in as 50,000, and then when the grants were awarded, they didn't understand why some folks got the full 100 and they only got 50, and we went back and realized it was because of that miscommunication about the match. So we did allocate $650,000 for this year's program. We awarded 608. We would like to go back and give Southfield the rest of the amount that they had asked for so that they can complete their project, which is another 50,000, which would put us at 658,000. So only 8,000 more than what we had originally planned to spend.
Moved by Yolanda, supported by Nancy Quarles. Discussion on the motion? That was quick. Let's have a roll call, please.
Smith Charles?
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
Vanderveen?
Yes.
Bagley?
Yes.
Herzog? Yes. LaFontaine?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Quarles? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Spent a lot of time on your design, but mention money, you get it right through. All right, now it's item 9, Wildlife Management Pilot Program. Sarah Cook.
You're just so excited, you were trying to skip ahead. So this is a change to our existing wildlife management program. I'm going to introduce Sean Zera. He's our wildlife program manager. He oversees our hunting program. He's going to give you a short presentation about what we're proposing, so feel free to ask questions during the proposal, during the slides if you'd like, and then we'll address everything at the end. But this kind of gives you an overview of what we're currently doing and what we're proposing. Go ahead.
Cool. Try to closer to the mic. Better? Okay, sorry. All right, so basically we have a problem, which is there are too many deer. There are more deer than there ever were historically, even though there's less habitat available for them. Best estimates are that prior to European settlement,
I'm still having trouble
eight, oh, sorry, 8 to 10 deer per square mile. Now it's significantly higher than that. Studies suggest that once you get into about 10 to 20 per square mile. Can you not hear me?
Yeah, just take it off the stand. The mic.
See if you can maybe hold
Pull it up to, yeah,
Go, Donnie.
try that.
Can you hear me better now?
That's better.
Sorry, it sounded okay over there.
Heard that.
Okay.
here.
So, in any case, best estimates are that prior to European settlement, there were about 8 to 10 deer per square mile. It's now significantly higher. A lot of studies have shown that once you get into about 10 to 20 per square mile, deer start damaging the natural habitat around them, and I'll get to that in a minute.
Burpa still here?
Pardon?
Gary?
I'm sorry, I thought I was on mute.
Oh, no worries. So, in any case, why were there fewer deer then? Well, even in Oakland County, we had a lot of predators. We had wolves, mountain lions, bobcats, all things that eat adult deer. And of course, people were hunting them heavily too as well. Then European settlers arrived. They killed all the predators, but they also killed all the deer. There were no hunting regulations back in the day, and they actually managed to wipe deer out of the lower peninsula almost entirely. That prompted a bunch of new legislation, the goal of which was to increase the deer population quickly. People wanted to hunt deer. Worked great because deer are really, really good at reproducing. Does have, twins or triplets every year. They reproduce at only 1.5 years old. Some of them actually even reproduce in their first year at only 7 months old. So it worked great. Even by as early as 1937, the very first deer biologist that the state hired was worried that there were too many deer. The state didn't listen. They listened to the deer hunters instead. Deer hunters love it when there are too many deer because it makes it easier to hunt. So the population grew. Thanks for listening to me go, thanks for listening to me go on about that.
Well, I had a lot of questions, but you kept on going.
And in fact, I even had a slide for that because
We'll get to
it's not a
them.
question, it's a statement.
Lance, you want to,
This is not a question. I have a statement. I am adamantly opposed to killing deer in our state. And I first want to point out, the head of DNR would rather invest money in high-tech bows with multiple razor blade arrow tips, that when they go in, they come out, bring out chunks of flesh. Yes, it's true that Oakland County, for example, there are more deer killed in automobile accidents than any other county in our state. But killing deer like this is not a solution. Across other parts of the United States where there are many more deer and different, I guess they call them ungulates, birth control is an effective measure. The deer, you stop and think about it, and the people that complain about the deer eating their plants, you know, we invaded the habitat of the deer. We invaded the habitat of a lot of animals. And many things that happened before by nature, we killed that off too, like I think Sean mentioned. So I'm strongly opposed to this type of kill situation where effective birth control measures could be implemented. They're implemented in other states. They have been proven to lower, like within 2 years, the deer population by 52%. The other thing that our state can do to prevent accidents is build bridges and underpasses so that animals can pass and go through. There's an old saying, why did the chicken want to cross the road? And the answer is to get to the other side, and that's true. But animals don't just roam randomly. They're going in their habitat, and we have interrupted that habitat. And then we grow plants in our backyard that the deer feed on, and we're angry about that. Grow some other plants. Try, for example, pennycress, Theaspia avens. The deer don't eat that, and it's a unique plant. My point is, I am adamantly opposed to supporting the kill of deer like this. I think it's horrific. And as far as the head of the Michigan DNR, I think there's something fundamentally wrong with anybody who gets a joy or a kick out of taking life. Bang, boom. So I would advise and suggest to my fellow commissioners, vote no.
I can appreciate what my fellow commissioner said. However, most of you know I am a golfer. I have been out on Glen Oaks, the old Beechwood Golf Course, which is now Southfield, and herds of deer has ran across the golf course to the point that people in carts have been knocked out of them. Now, I do understand the deer wasn't trying to, I would imagine deer wasn't trying to attack a person, but there is a fear, there is a bit of unsafety towards human beings. I can also appreciate what you said about not growing food or plants that the deer want to eat. But I also recognize people have choices, and there are those who truly enjoy gardening. And as opposed to, because I have some relatives that are really into gardening and whatever you call it. Believe me, I don't do gardening, I do golf. And they don't want to put poison or some kind of pesticide that would harm the deer. But yet they are looking at ways to try to keep from having the deer eating their good. So I can appreciate that. I I would much rather see a sharpshooter out there as opposed to volunteers. And I know there are many people who do know how to handle firearms, but there have been times, two things. One, that I had to leave Glen Oaks. I left Glen Oaks because I was fearful of the deers as they were running. And then secondly, I don't want to be out in a place like that where you have people just randomly shooting. I recognize that a sharpshooter is usually trained, and they are usually at the top of their profession. So at this point, I would support this. And my major reason is safety to people, especially people out in parks. And I don't even have to talk about in parks. I'm sure Commissioner Smith is aware of how herds of deers run through Magnolia Parkway, Magnolia Home Association, as well as Northland. I mean, herds of them, to the point that when I lived in that area, I couldn't even turn down my street because the herds were so deeply. And I feared for some of the kids that were out there at that time. Director Ward may remember when a deer ran through Oakland County Commissioner's meeting room. Yeah, I mean, you probably really remember that. But that glass, I mean, the deer ran right through that glass. And as much as I do not, and I agree with you about that, want to see just randomly shooting, I don't know how you would look at a way to decrease that population. The bigger issue, and I don't like to pass things off to another government level, is the state needs to be really reviewing their laws and regulations on birth control. Now, if that was a possibility to get the state reps and the state senators moving faster on that, I think that should take place. But I do have a question. What will they do with the carcasses of the bodies if we pass this? What would they do with the carcasses of the deer or the bodies or the meat? What would happen to that? The venison, I should say. Okay, so they would donate it back to?
Meat comes back to us, and we donate it to whatever banks.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it goes to food banks. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Into Commissioner Quarles' comments. Geez, I'm gonna at a staff level, our choice really here, because we have to live within the regulatory environment that exists, is either to attempt this pilot program and try to find a more effective solution, or to continue what we have found to be a less effective solution to the problem. Commissioner Stokes' point, I think there's certainly maybe some room, or if there's interest on the part of the commission, to address that through a non-binding resolution to the state folks to ask them to investigate and to consider other options. And clearly, we don't have that flexibility as a local agency to arbitrarily make those decisions. So just ask you to consider that, the practical implications of what we're going to do versus what we would like to have. I mean, there are two different methods of pursuing that.
Consideration. Yolanda?
Mr. Chair, I liken
to what commissioners, both Stokes and Quarles have shared, I was totally against deer hunting just as a general practice until I learned that there is an overpopulation. It is so frightening when you run into a deer inadvertently in your car. And, you know, it costs a great deal of money to repair any of those. And of course, I want the deer to survive, but usually they don't when they're hit by the car. And so it's ironic because I just maybe 3 months ago attended the Road Commission's tour, and the Road Commission was just adamant how safe our roads are here. Like, you could literally drive in Oakland County and be safer than in Wayne or Macomb. So it's troubling to hear the exact opposite of that when it comes to deer. I think deer incidences with motor vehicles. So that does cause me some pause, especially as we get into this time of year where it's like they're just everywhere. And to your point, Commissioner Quarles, we had whole families in my little triangle of the part of town that I live in. So I say all that because when we think about geese, which are also without a predator right now, like their only predator really are human beings, and we're not allowed to hit them at all. I feel it's the same thing with the deer. It's like they don't have a natural predator anymore. So as much as I hate it, there needs to be the cycle of life. Everyone needs a predator, and thankfully we're at the top of the spear as humans. So while I don't like it, I do see value in some capacity. Now, when we talk about these sharpshooters, it gives me some peace of mind that it is the USDA. It's not a for-profit, as you mentioned. I feel like the meat will get where it needs to go. So the lesser of two evils, I guess it is, Mr. Stokes, for me, is that there needs to be a predator. They're just proliferating all over the place because they don't have that, and I don't want my car to be their predator. I'd rather a nice little sharpshooter safely nested up in some tree canopy or something. So I'm okay with it under the guise of what we're faced with today, particularly in Oakland County.
Thank you. Lance, did you want to speak? Did you want to speak? Go ahead.
I don't know if does that help?
No, go ahead.
There's no question. The population of deer is overwhelming. My point is that very much aware that the head of DNR brags about the fact that deer are dirty, that they cause accidents, and he is opposed to contraceptive measures, which have proven, even with wild horses in the West, to call that the numbers, that would decrease. We do need to decrease the number of deer. It's not good to have deer running all. I don't want to run into them in my car either. I'm just saying it's horrible to have kills in areas, especially where deer have gotten used to, oh, we're safe here, and they're not. And that sickens me. And that's why, and I do, it's my own personal opinion, I think there is something profoundly wrong with someone who gets a joy out of killing something. Profoundly wrong. So that's why I am opposed to approving this. Knowing that, yes, we have an over-deer population, but there is a better way. And as Director Mr. Ward said, perhaps we can make a recommendation that our state consider contraceptive methods. And this thing about, oh, it costs too much. That's baloney. Just plain baloney. I'll step down.
Andrea?
I motion to approve the proposed wildlife management pilot program.
I'm sorry?
Motion to approve.
Motion? Support. I'm not sure we're done with the discussion, but we have a motion and a support. Anybody else want to weigh in? Obviously touched on the emotional subject here. I have a couple of questions. Aren't coyotes predators? Pardon me? Okay. How about rattlesnakes? We protect those. Wouldn't they be predators too? Yeah. I guess my thoughts have been, I have trouble with bringing in the feds to kill our deer. I've supported the hunters before. That's part of sport in Michigan in particular. But bringing in the feds sort of rubs me wrong. I spent my life dealing with the feds in the form of the FAA. I'm suspicious. Yeah. Chris, did you want to pursue your?
I'd be happy if the commission would like us to pursue some policy change, talk with the DNR. I think the coalition that Sean mentioned is probably the best avenue to do so. I did actually have a meeting with the city manager yesterday, and this was right at the top of the list. They were looking for help and assistance and guidance from us. Working through that coalition, it makes a lot of sense. They would like to see the state take a larger role overall in helping out with this problem in the county, especially considering those stats. So I'd be looking to you if that's something you'd like us to consider.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
It's not a fault to you all or anything, but I don't know if there's been enough information to show how effective, like the sharpshooter or whatever is compared to hunter. You know what I mean? Like that data, I feel like might be missing for us to get a full picture. Okay. In a humane way, like how can, it has to be humane, right?
One question I have for you guys. Sure. I mean, you might have touched on this. I think I read climate change really accelerating, exacerbating this issue with and also being an issue with ticks that really become horrendous this year.
Lyme disease?
Yeah, ticks and spreading Lyme disease and other diseases. Well, there's your talking point. Yes.
That, I thought that was passed through actually contact with feces, because dogs can get it. Dogs can get it, that's my understanding. Or am I wrong? Okay.
One other question I have. What is the estimated deer population? Addison Oaks. Addison Oaks. Hundred and 38. How many would you call in this effort one night? Ooh. Man tinkering with nature. Any other discussion? If not, we do have a motion and a support. I think we ought to have a roll call.
Stokes,
No.
Vanderveen,
Yes.
Bagley,
Yes.
Herzog? Yes. LaFontaine,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes?
Quarles, Smith Charles.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thanks so much. We'll incorporate all the feedback that you gave us today. We have some follow-up items, so thank you.
We will have a report back on how the pilot program worked.
And we'll follow up on the suggestions.
I know that. Thank you. All right, item 10, Pontiac Oaks, Hawthorne quote from quote playground.
All right, good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm here today seeking approval of the expenditure of previously appropriated funds for the Independence Pine Grove Playground to be reallocated to our new asset as coming up here on October 1st, Pontiac Oaks. On initial inspection, all right. Can you go down to the picture slide? Right after. All right. So upon initial inspection of the existing playground at Pontiac Oaks, some things really apparent. So this is the existing 5-year-old play structure in the area. It's severely outdated. part of this, again, the Independence Pine Grove budget was 150,000, so we are reallocating that and recommending approval of a contract with Miracle Recreation Equipment Co., who we awarded contracts for Macro Park and Green Acres Park previously back in July. Again, this was supposed to be part of that round of playgrounds, and Miracle was going to be awarded independent, so we changed it here. So recommending that approval of their contract for $139,867.84 and a total project cost of $165,000.
Right.
So the original park will still be there. Now, is that park tailored or catered to older children, or is that one for 2 to 5-year-olds as well?
Correct. So the older portion that we are retaining is for 5 to 12-year-olds, and that structure is much more robust. It is a standard like fire steel and everything like that, whereas this 2 to 5-year-old kid structure was clearly put in at a different time and at a different budget cost. It is all plastic. Doesn't even have real footings in the ground when we checked it out. So you can honestly just kind of pull it out of the ground. It's kind of like a little pig's playground.
Anybody else? Lance?
Question. When we have toys like that in our parks, if a child is injured, are we liable or is it at their own risk? Let's say a younger child goes on a activity that is for an older child or something even. But are we liable for that? The child is injured?
I would have to get a specific answer from legal, but as part of all our playground program projects, we do put signs out in these labels for different playgrounds for the board. My understanding is that legally covers that. But these signs say what each structure is for. They also say, play at your own risk and so on and so forth. Kind of
Thank you.
Something you might talk about with risk management, sure.
Hi, Darren. We had fun today.
Yeah, I'm totally got it.
Yeah. I wanted to just check, maybe I'm not familiar with the cost of playground equipment, but this seems like a lot of money. I just want to make sure it's in the budget. I don't know, everyone's talking about prices coming down next year. Maybe this is something we just wait on. I just want to get, like, do you think this is a...
Sure. So, picture's down now. So, one of our larger costs that we are incurring on our playgrounds in these new rounds of the learning standards is the rubberized surface. On this project alone, the rubberized surface were to the tune of over $30,000 of that $139,000. Again, that's just with these new standards and creating accessibility into the main features within the playground. We are strategically putting it that it was why it is. We could theoretically put it all in that surface, but that really from a playground total cost perspective, like on the actual equipment, things have gone up. I hear rumblings that they might come down, but not considerably. Again, the biggest ticket item that we're seeing is really that rubber surface. I think this playground is an actual maybe 70,000 to 80,000. I'd have to look at this.
What's the brown part?
Oh, so that's the existing play structure area. If you go a couple more, I think there's an area where all they didn't, we didn't want to get into the that gray area, brown area, is the last play area. So for this person, we're at phase 14, up here is at 5 to 8, 5 to 12.
So will any of that be green space, like grass, or
called 5R mulch, which is a, well, actually in this case, we're using regular mulch, but it is compacted mulch that does meet ADA standards. So the rubber surface is kind of above and beyond the standards of what is required at the technical level to make the playground accessible, but it is definitely where the industry is going. Again, a lot of park systems are putting full rubber surfaces throughout. With how many playgrounds we have and the amount of facilities we have, that would just be cost prohibitive, especially when you factor in maintenance costs down the line. Rubber surfaces tend to last only 10 to 15 years before they break down, basically due to usage, at least with current technologies. So going with these odd cast styles like this becomes a lot easier to replace because you can essentially haul out individual sections to be replaced, whereas if it's the whole surface, you really get into a patching kind of thing there. And we are still looking at accessibility since the mulch itself, there are types of mulch that meet that. But it is nice to give that amenity where it's easier to, for someone, say, in a wheelchair, roll.
Absolutely, absolutely, we agree on that. So I'm trying to stay in my lane, which is the 30,000-foot view. I'm a board member, not in the day-to-day, but I just hear mulch. I know at my house, we have to replace it every year, and it looks like a large swath of land there that you're gonna be doing. So just trying to be mindful of resources and, what is it, 80 communities in Oakland County, they all chip in mulch on certain days of the week. Maybe we could just have the community give us the mulch.
Yep, and our operations team is really great about working with local entities. Eric?
Yeah, so for the playgrounds, there's a certain standard and certification mulch that you have to use that meets safety standards that we use in our playground. And there's certain standards for playground safety that we have to follow. That's why the area is so big, to make sure that safe for all people to play on. In our annual budget, all of our parks are
Yeah, and just to clarify, so this is kind of a weird playground in that we inherited it and we also don't have funds to replace the whole thing. But a lot of our new playgrounds, we are putting in fiber mulch, which is synthetic, so it doesn't break down as quickly. In fact, most of your loss is just due to it being tracked out of the play area. So that does eliminate put a lot more versus the other playground. Eric will have to do his due diligence to make sure we're getting mulch as cheap as we can since it is traditional.
As far as pricing goes, either you spend it all up front or you spend it over time.
Exactly.
Got it. Thank you.
You do pay for that, like, there's
Nancy?
Which this led right into my question. I don't want to sound like I'm foregoing my fiduciary responsibilities, but I'm more concerned about safety. And particularly on this type of equipment that you're recommending, and the age group. If I remember, I read this, like 5-year-olds and younger.
for this new structure.
Yeah.
Not
So,
including the climbers, the fence, that's just the
okay, so what can you tell me about the safety of it?
Sure.
Is there statistics or something?
I don't have any statistics off the top of my head, but generally what they do for the younger ages is they limit how high a structure can go, so these are very low. I think it's only 3 or 4 steps to the highest platform. That way your fall distance is proportional to your body height, or about the same as the larger structure. So yeah, you've got 4 steps up to the highest platform. Again, this is for 2 to 5, so they're at varying levels. So usually where this
Okay. And the grounds and the material that's used on the grounds is taken into consideration for kids?
Yeah, so that's what Eric was saying. Playground mulch is has very specific requirements. That's so when you do fall, it has enough give to it, limiting space. So you can't just use your standard garden mulch, either synthetic mulches like fiberglass mulch or traditional mulch. You have to buy playground grade, and it is very deep. Like we're talking 12 plus inches, and the higher a structure goes, the deeper that gets. So this is a house structure. It's not as deep. It's closer to that 12, whereas the main structure, you can see depths requirements of up to 18 inches, which a playground inspector we have on staff right now, but he does go around each year and inspect all our playgrounds, make sure that all our requirements for safety are met. Depth of mulch,
And my last question, again, I apologize, I'm not into the recreation world, so I don't know exact wording, but things like mulch and others around there, I don't know about others, but I'm thinking of my 3-year-olds that I'm around, they have a tendency to want to put everything in their mouth. I don't know if I don't think we can control that, but,
So it does come with anything that's interactive, not be taken out of the structure. So there are sensory boards and stuff like that where you can move puzzle pieces around. But everything is fixed to the structure. That's it. Really the only thing that you can't prevent is the mulch or we don't have any graphical things, but I know some things are graphical. There's really not much.
thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Not a motions and Jim.
Mention that this is a great example of why we're doing, I think, what we're doing with local communities and how we're investing in this is a great park. And I do a lot of work in Pontiac, and it's a really loved park. People love coming here with their families. And this is going to be just an improvement that the whole community will really appreciate. So I really want to thank the parks for doing this, and you know, the whole park. We've already started the improvements that are really going to have an impression on the community. So I just want to thank you for doing this, and I totally support it.
Is that a motion, Jim?
I would be happy to.
Moved by Nat, supported by Ebony. Roll call, please.
Vanderveen,
Yes.
Bagley. Yes. Herzog. Yes. LaFontaine.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Quarles. Smith Charles.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I would remind everybody that we have about 4 items left, and it's 25 after 4. We need to, everybody, we need to keep moving. So let's get to item 12. Social media consolidation plan.
So this is exciting. Our Healthy Communities Park and Outdoor Recreation Investment Plan, we're bringing you the first of 4 park action plans. And this is on 3 of them, we've executed the interlocal partnership agreement, and one of the requirements of that is a park action plan is approved by the city council. So our first step is to bring it to you. It is fairly complete, but it is preliminary. There are some gaps and things that we're still finishing up. And then from here, we're going to take it for review to the city council. Pontiac staff is reviewing it, and then take it to them for approval. So I have a PowerPoint to sort of run through the different sections. It's a big document, so I'm going to proceed here. First of all, I'm just going to point out the map that's on this picture is from our public engagement. One of the things we did at our open house events was invite people to put notes on the map and tell us their memories of the park. Hawthorne Park, as Commissioner Nash said, is a very beloved park. Okay, let's see. Make sure I get this right. What am I supposed to say? gonna get the hang of this. These are the different sections of the park action plan, and I'm just gonna run through each of these, and feel free to interrupt me if you would like to discuss any part of it. First of all, the first part is the introduction, where we discuss the foundation of how we got to this point, our healthy communities investment plan, our recreation master plan with our core values, and then relating this park action plan to the interlocal partnership agreement. There's some, besides requiring the park action plan, there's also some really, really specific sections that are required that are contained in the park action plan. Our interlocal agreement was executed by everybody in June, requiring that, and then some of the additional requirements of the interlocal agreement are integrated, and that's a capital improvement plan, a park operations and maintenance plan, the POMP, and a park security plan. And it also identifies the transition period, which is the period between executing the interlocal and approving the park action plan is that transition. Okay. Also, okay, the transition period plan. With Pontiac, it was Hawthorne Park. It was really important to everybody involved that we get right to work in Pontiac at Hawthorne Park. So because the park action, generally we weren't going to start activities until we had the approved park action plan, we developed a transition period plan that was approved by the mayor so that we get started doing the sorts of projects that Derek was just presenting. And that was a general cleanup of the park, starting natural resources management, and then specific capital improvement projects, such as the dock here that we're replacing, and replacing the parts of the playground. Cleanup of the restrooms and getting that functioning. All right. Okay. So two sections, community context and community engagement. The community context is, the demographics, the characteristics of the city, of the surrounding area. We looked at a 10-minute drive time. And then our community engagement has two separate parts. The planning engagement, which is what we are doing before we bring a designer in and look at future improvements. And then the design engagement, which is going to happen later on after the park action plan is approved. With the planning engagement, we are asking people, the stakeholders, park users, what do you need? What's important to you? And what do you care about? We're not proposing anything, we're finding out what's important to folks. And so we did an online and in-person survey, 3 open house events. We are finishing up the report on that. There's a lot of data, but preliminary results are really favoring preservation of nature and open space and just managing and improving existing facilities. I want to do a couple of shout outs. It was all hands on deck for the open houses, so we really appreciate everybody being there. Appreciate your participation, Commissioner Bagley. It was great to see you there. And I also really want to acknowledge our planner, Jess Watley, who coordinated the public engagement and did an amazing job. So that very detailed public engagement report will be an appendix to the park actions. Environmental conditions and existing conditions are both requirements of the interlocal partnership agreement. We had a phase 1 environmental site assessment done, and it indicated what everybody already knew. This was a horrible landfill site at the southern part of the property. And so we did a phase 2, and there were in the landfill site, there were several items of concern identified. And right now we're doing additional sampling to develop our baseline environmental assessment, which establishes that any contamination there precedes our operation. of the park, and our Do Care plan, which is our plan for how we keep the public safe, whether we develop away from those things, if there's other actions we need to do. All of that is still. And then looking at the existing conditions, which is a very systematic documentation of everything at the site at the time the transition period ends, which kind of has two phases. We've got information there about condition we found it in, but we're going to be updating that with the changes that we made during the transition. And can you do that double screen thing for me? And then we have a strategic plan. So this is our proposed park vision for Pontiac Oaks. Pontiac Oaks at Hawthorne Park is a popular destination for Pontiac and Oakland County residents to be active and social or to relax and connect with nature. The park is safe and welcomes everyone. It is resilient and helps create a more sustainable future for the people of Pontiac and for the environment. So we are proposing that as the long-term vision for the park. You can go back. And then another part of the strategic plan are park goals and objectives, and we have about 10 goals in there, which I'm not going to read to you, but we invite your review of those. And those are broader strategies leading to, that are going to help us get to that vision. And then park objectives, which are real specific strategies, actions, and projects that are going to implement it. And it's noted throughout the objectives where they align with the interlocal partnership agreement. So this is a requirement. There's in here. When they align with the Pontiac 5-year recreation plan. So we want to reference what Pontiac has also determined is important in this park, and where they align with our 5-year recreation plan. And then as we finish up the public engagement plan, we'll reference, where it aligns with the public engagement. So also in the strategic action plan, we identify a phased timeline for Pontiac Oaks. Phase 1 we're calling Park Refresh, and that is the transition period. The activities and improvements during that time to clean the park up and fix things and help people to enjoy it even more. And then phase 2, which would be after the park action plan is approved, is park design improvement. And that would be bringing on our design consultant, creating a design master plan for the park, and then implementing those ARPA-funded projects. And because that funding is limited, the public engagement is going to help us to focus where we focus those priorities. And then we also identify phase 3, park investment improvement. Once that ARPA grant period is over, how are we going to continue to operate and invest in the park? And many of those things are identified as potentially needing feasibility studies, further public engagement to determine, whether we move ahead. We have suggested some things that, may be identified. And then this is basically everything else. The detailed plans and reports, the capital improvement plan, the park operations and maintenance plan, the park security plan, those are all founded in the objectives in the strategic plan. And those are detailed. I'll note that while the park action plan is approved by the city council, the capital improvement plan, that gets integrated into our capital improvement plan. And, before any of those things are funded and move forward, such as, the presentation Darren just gave, will be approved by the commission. And then the public engagement report will be attached to that. And then we've integrated at the end reference materials so that you have the letter to a full
fast, it was very thorough, Donna. Thank you. Any comments, questions?
You all approved this in June, so it's on June. It's going now, and you can see the change. And it's really made a difference. And building trust is important. I saw that. What we're doing is amazing. It's pretty meaningful to see it. Comes out without creating a much easier space. We're on track with this being approved to fully transition the park on October 1st.
That's what I was gonna ask, the time period.
And that's Donna, Eric, Aaron, and Dunleavy is taking this on. And really, they've also shown a genius for stretching the dollars as well. Repurposing what's there, using our own staff resources to make it positive. The playground project is a good example of that. Taking some funding that would have been utilized for independence, where there's still some useful life, repurposing. It's an improvement. By spring, refresh the playground. And while it may not be what we'd love it to be, we're on a much better path. Exciting things are happening, and looking forward to seeing all this come to fruition, and then the other things that are going to follow.
Very good. We have a motion, we have a support. Well, it's been moved, and supported.
Oh, by
Oh,
who?
support. Well, I thought Jim Nash moved. Oh, maybe I moved for you when you made your first opening comment. Okay. We need a support. Ebony, okay.
So Nash
Now,
and
yeah, now a roll call.
Bagley? Yes. Herzog?
Yes.
LaFontaine?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Quarles? Smith Charles?
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
Vanderbean?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Well, Jim, I thought I asked you when I said, is that a motion? I thought you said yes.
Thank you. We'll be back next month with
Thank
Red
you.
Oaks and Madison Heights.
All right, now it's the social media consolidation plan. Desiree?
Basically, Facebook is one of the key ways that we communicate with people across the county to let them know about our parks, programs, grant program we talked about earlier, letting people know about the ARPA program, all types of things. Currently, we have about 30,000 subscribers to our Facebook. That's more than the entire county, all of the channels, all the resources and health department, all the other departments combined. We have more people that follow our page. Because what we do is interesting, exciting, inviting. That creates a lot of work. So previous administration came up with the idea that they wanted a Facebook page for every single park and additional pages for things like the Marshmallow Drop, Fire and Ice. So now we're up to 27, and we have talked about all of these great projects. We're going to be able to include ARPA. It's going to add even more. So Tiffany Mason is with me. She is our social media guru. And what
other ones, just a month, one time a month, which really isn't doing a service to those parks, and our staff puts effort into it. So we want your permission to basically downsize, be more strategic, and then once we have your approval, we'll go to them and say, this is the plan that we're gonna do moving forward. If you have any specific questions, either I can answer them or Tiffany can.
Anybody want to weigh in?
Real quick,
Ebony?
I'm sorry, it's gonna be quick. So the only question I had, you might have already said, my apologies. So what are the 88 specific consolidated?
Oh, sure.
Is it right here I'm looking at?
Yes, it is. So basically general, a lot of things would fall under that, like trails, playgrounds, recreation programming services. You can see the entire list there. Aquatics, campgrounds, golf courses, natural resources, and we heard earlier that nature centers are gonna fall, they're gonna combine together. The farmer's market, which is our number one most popular page. Dog parks and Hollywood Florida. And this also kind of mirrors the statistics that we get from our website, pages that are most frequently visited, that type of thing. So it's really kind of bringing everything together and putting a focus on certain content areas and allowing us to really roll the content.
And then I'm sure you guys will post creative names for those pages.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I apologize. I appreciate the report because I love social media. A couple things I was going to mention was simply pages are cool. Has there been any thought to a Oakland County Parks group? And then my other question, well, comment more so is, I used to spend 30 to 90 minutes on a post until I met ChatGPT. So of course, I would love for you to not have that level of 30 minutes on what to say. That thing is like two virtual assistants in one. So, just saying. Thank you.
So we've been directed by the Department of Public Communications not to use any kind of AI in our posting because there's huge copyright issues and, you know, you pay us to create that content, so I might as well be creating it.
Love it. Who said not to use it? I want
That
to
would be
write
Ms. Caitlin Keeler.
it. Okay. Thank you.
It's also from the executive's office, his representation said, stay away from ChatGPT.
Okay. Thank you.
Nancy?
I love the idea of the Facebook group though too. Commissioner Charles' point. I'm sorry.
Okay, Nancy, and then you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure I'm clear. Taking it from the 30 down to the 8, which is good. Is that going to affect the parks, or is that just, I was trying to read through it again. Maybe I was half asleep last night when I was looking at this. I wasn't sure what your consolidated is just for the department, or is it for each one of the parks that's under? Does it have any, I guess the question is netted out, will it have any effect on each one of our parks?
It will have an effect on each one of its parks because we brainstorm monthly, and we try to make sure that everybody gets coverage. We always start with the revenue areas. We'll say to ourselves, what revenue centers are in key operation right now? So we always make sure that we have posts for golf courses, campgrounds, farmers market is a given, aquatics, when they're in operation, and then we also make sure that we're not missing things like RPS, nature centers. We're trying to make sure that everybody gets a piece of the pie, they're getting promotion. So I don't think that there would be any loss. I think we would actually engage more people. And then Eric, who used to work for Metro Parks, they have one account, one page. Tiffany did some research across the United States, some of our key competitors that are our size. Same thing, they have one page. They do not have individual pages for facilities.
Okay.
Thank you. I think the idea is to talk to people about water. It's water for both. So by putting aquatics in one, people get to follow. Our general purpose, be across.
Right, and on an average day, we do up to 5 posts, no more than 5, so there's plenty of opportunity to spread information about all of it. Another thing it's gonna help us with climate change and other things that are happening. Emails start coming in the morning, like we had the storm. This golf course is closed, that golf course, that golf course. So Tiffany goes to every single page and has to post the same message. Then when they get their electricity back, she has to go back through it again to make sure, oh, you know, that page has been updated. This way we can say, due to the storm, these golf courses are closed today. These golf courses are open. It's just gonna really help with consolidation and the messaging as well. I don't know if you have anything else.
Excited about the opportunity for cross-promotion. I think there are a very unscientific survey when I'm out and about asking, at one park, do you know of this park? Do you know this is also in Oakland County Park? And some people, if it's not in their community, they aren't aware, particularly, let's say, Madison Lake, if you go to Red Oaks, not all of them are aware of Waterford's Way. So I think the opportunity to group by interest and then make sure everybody knows about all of our facilities within that interest, we can be more efficient, we can create better content, and it will be easier for some of the other government agencies like the Executive's Office to amplify our content instead of having to just follow one page and share information. We have a lot of good stuff to share, and I think we can go further.
Okay, anything else? Moving right along. Some approval. We need a motion and a support. Moved by Ebony, supported by Amanda. Roll call, please.
Herzog?
Yes.
LaFontaine?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Quarles?
Yes.
Smith Charles?
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
Vanderveen?
Yes.
Bagley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, ladies. Item 13, Lion Oaks Event Center rental fees. Tom?
Good afternoon. As Chris had mentioned earlier, White Lake Oaks and Lion Oaks, the liquor license were removed from the event spaces. Since that happened here at Lion Oaks, which is in July, we've got a lot of interest in the facility rental. We've had bookings all the way through this year. We got a lot of inquiries for next year. Normally, our fees and charges are done in November with so many interest in the facility for next year. We want to capture that revenue and get the fees that change right now to match the demand out there right now. Also, adding a 3-day rental fee to the facility as well, similar to Ellis Barn, because so many rentals come in there to bring everything into the facility, so it takes more than 1 day for those rentals to have their events. So it makes it a lot more accommodating to have a little bit cheaper rate for multiple days for those rentals. And we got a lot of interest in that rental from inquiries who want to have this facility rented. So we're looking at increasing the fees beginning October 1st for next year. We've communicated to all the future rentals, what the potential increase would be, and there's no hesitation, so it won't impact any rentals for next year as well. So trying to capture the revenues and make these event centers more viable. So this is a good model, and it seems to be working here at Lion Oaks. So just requesting to move forward with increasing the rate for Lion Oaks.
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Quarles?
Yes.
Smith Charles?
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
Vanderveen?
Yes.
Bagley?
Yes.
Herzog?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Tom. Got 7 minutes to 5, and we got 3 items. We're almost there.
Yeah, we can do it. Service, service recognition for Dan Stencil and Becky Lewis. Chris, I guess that's yours.
At your last meeting, you approved the renaming of a pavilion at Southfield, or excuse me, Catalpa Oaks, for former Senator and Commissioner Vince Gregory, which the ceremony will be on Monday, September 18th. Hopefully you all can make it. 5:30 to 6:30 is the planned program. Dan Stencil will be in town for the M Parks Hall of Fame banquet in October. We have a long-standing tradition of recognizing our former executive officers with a plaque somewhere in our park system. Dan has indicated his preference for the Farmers Market building, which the plaque may have to move if we decide we want to move the Farmers Market in the future. So with that wish in mind, I just wanted to bring that before you, along with in July, our longest serving Parks Commission Chair, Becky Lewis, passed away, and it was, an opportunity to think back on the many contributions that he provided to Oakland County Parks over the years. And in discussing with his family, I think we've settled upon a plan to put a plaque up at the Red Oaks golf course clubhouse. He was the former mayor of Royal Oak, so that's fairly nearby. And just wanted to get your blessing to proceed with this.
It's very appropriate. We should have a commission approval on that. Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve as presented by Director Ward?
Support.
Moved by Lance, supported by Yolanda. Any more discussion? Nice to see Becky Lewis. Now let's have a roll call, please.
Nash?
Yes.
Quarles?
Yes.
Smith Charles?
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
Vanderbeek?
Yes.
Bagley?
Yes.
Herzog?
Yes.
LaFontaine?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And, we've only had 6 people serving the position of chair in our history.
Yeah.
So, former chair Wint is our nation. So the remaining honor them.
Perfect. Unless somebody objects. No objection.
Okay.
Proceed.
Very
Item 15.
Okay, director's report, and how many minutes do I have?
You have,
I'm gonna do
we
this.
have a total of 5
minutes.
left.
All right, rapid fire. Just want to note that our annual, what formerly was our invasive species community program, is now named the Habitat Improvement Program. Application period will be open, and that information will be on our website. We'll be reaching out to the local communities about that opportunity. Earlier in the year, you all approved a series of new, what we've always called appreciation days, which were free park entry days, with some encouragement from the public that we expand that to include other seasons of the year, other opportunities that, say, working people and families could participate in. So we've had several already this year, including Juneteenth and our Restoring the Outdoor days. And we had our first pet appreciation day with free dog park entry a couple weekends ago, on the 26th, and handed out a bunch of free dog bowls and provided some opportunity for folks with dogs to, I think we had a competition with pictures, right? People take pictures of their dogs and put it online, and there was a prize.
Yeah, on social media, we encourage people to take a picture of themselves and their dog. At our dog parks come at 8.
Mhm.
We have somebody just take a picture, and the staff participate. Got a gift card.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
And so that was sent to the winner.
Largely, I think a success that we're going to keep building upon as we test these out and see what we can accomplish on these days. The next one is in coalition, as part of the county's overall Welcoming Week celebration. The county joined Welcoming America a few years ago, which really focused on celebrating diversity and welcoming, especially new Americans, immigrants, into the community. And so we've been working with the county executive staff on that, coordinate our efforts. And so the weekend of September 16th and 17th, we will have free park entry again. There's a typo in here. It's actually the 16th. We'll have 2 special events. One celebrating Hispanic heritage at the Farmers Market in partnership with La Casa Amiga, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that, or maybe somebody else. Centro Multicultural La Familia. Okay, good. And celebrating Asian culture at the Chinese Community Center in Madison Heights, and would love to see any of you if you're available to attend. Reminder of the Dan Stencil Hall of Fame banquet. I think we have some tables reserved. If you haven't indicated whether you'd like to come or not yet, please let Jamie know, and she'll make sure you're taken care of. We've held several veterans food distribution events and been very successful. Most recent one at Independence Oaks that served 289 area veterans. And I'm going to just, you could read through the rest of these things. But I do want to update you on Southfield. I brought you up to speed with kind of a bump in the road with our negotiations with Southfield. As part of that overall Healthy Communities plan, you'll remember the 9-hole golf course in Southfield that we had reached an agreement tentatively with Southfield that we would take over and create the Southfield Oaks as kind of a nature preserve in that space. Their part of the deal was to build a splash pad. That really did not go over well with the public in the community, which then has caused them to have to reboot and come up with Plan B. They've now provided that to us, which is, you know, they would like to continue to pursue building a new shared parking area, and they plan for more of a passive use in that area, where the splash pad is planned with pavilions and playgrounds. So with that new information, I think we're able to get back to the table and finalize this legal agreement, which is really the last piece of, you know, of the legal structure that will support all of our efforts. And I think most likely you'll have that up in October. That's good news. At your last meeting, there was a member of the public who came regarding the Oakland Community College Highland Lakes campus, which is on track to be closed. The college is experiencing a huge shift from in-person classes to online, and they just really have a need to reduce their footprint of their building space. It's become a very popular location for people in the surrounding. There's really 4 townships that all meet together right at that spot. And they've been utilizing it as a park and would very much like to see it in a park. And I just want to share, I've met with the township and OCC about that. I think that there's reason for optimism that at least a portion of the property will be preserved for recreation. We'll see how that goes, and maybe there would be a role for us. Maybe not, but it's pretty keep the conversation moving along and keep you up to date on that. And and finally, I think Donna mentioned this, but I do want you to be aware that our public engagement is going to start kicking off for our Red Oaks Ambassador Park property that was part of the Healthy Communities Plan, and then Oak Park as well towards the end of this month. So we'll keep you apprised on that. And that's it.
Very good. Oh, covered a lot of ground. Okay, well, last on the agenda is the Executive Committee's report. We had a meeting on August 28. Everybody was there. Gary, Ebony, myself, Chris, all either there physically or virtually. We also, some of the stuff that Chris just mentioned, and we used an hour and a half in discussing it, which is about half the time of this meeting. We were pretty thorough on what we discussed. So with that, is there any other announcements or concerns of any of the commission members? It's just a hair after 5. We made it, folks. Not necessary. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, Lance.